Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises to the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachahakwadash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders at Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations, as always, to the elect. You sincere brothers and sisters coming back to the Most High, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, through the sacrifice made by his only begotten Son, Hamashiach, Yahweh Shai, our Messiah, our Savior, our Mediator, our High Priest. All right. And ultimately, in these latter days, through his blood, his death, burial, and resurrection, we've received the Holy Spirit, which gives us the ability to testify, before the major judgment. And we are testifying of our Lord and Savior and what he came to do when he came as a man, and also what he's going to do when he comes as an angelic force, to start the process of setting up paradise on earth. The throne of David will be established on earth as it is in heaven, which is a righteous government where the law, statutes, and commandments of the Heavenly Father, be the standard of how humans will live under the rulership and guidance of the priest after the order of Melchizedek. A nation of kings and priests, starting with the 12 disciples, the rest of the 144,000. And that's going to be the government, that's going to establish the order of the heavens on earth. Along with the large multitude, which is the rest of the men, women, and children who will be delivered as well. All right. They will serve their roles, being joint heirs unto Yahweh Shai through the 144,000. And that's what the Lord's determination is as we are living at the end of Esau's world. We're starting to see his hypocrisy, how much of a problem he is, how draining he is, how annoying he is, how, unfair, unjust, unruly he is, how proud he is. And the scripture said that the pride of Esau's heart would deceive him. And as this man is moving along to establish his NWO, and we see this fight to restore America to its so-called Christian roots, man, one of the things that tickles me more than anything is to see this devil try to present himself as this loving, caring Christian. All right. But nothing that comes from this man, all right, reflects it. All right. And we're witnessing this Donald Trump regime. One of their many talking points is the talking point of making America Christian again. And here it is. They're rallying behind this Donald Trump character as some savior, as some, standard of, Jesus, as, we see, his following, guys that follow him, like Captain Kirk, who was just, taken back to the spirit world via being hit in the neck. The talking point of we are against, the trans, we're against, certain behaviors that go against biblical principles. Yet Monsanto exists, and there's no cry out against that. Yet many, principles that go against the Holy Scriptures are forwarded even under the Trump administration. One of his right-hand men is a Mo. There aren't any laws being passed to ban or pass laws to where you can't perform libiquita community activities. It's just a talking point. It's just a point to draw interest, and it also plays into the two horns like a lamb. We look at the book of Revelation 11, and you have two horns like a lamb. The right wing, the right spectrum of it represents, a Christian, whereas the leftist represents the liberal, and the Christian, wants to live by biblical principles, family, anti-abortion, pro-God, whereas the left, say that a Christian nationalism is a threat to democracy and civil liberties and civil rights. And they got Jake thrown all up in there to, just create this pot of confusion in which Esau Edom is able to just dominate and forward himself through these two opposing ideologies. And it's worked for him. But we're at the point where things are getting ready to take a turn. And you see these devils rallying behind Donald Trump, and you see they're, all coming together, even though they don't agree on anything under the guise of Christian, Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Candace Owens, it's many of them, Matt Walsh, as you see this post here, they're all, rooted in this Christian nationalist ideology. But where America cracks me up is that they want to erase the actual history of Christian nationalism and what it did to the earth and how it was really what it was really founded in. Linking God with politics as a means to forward Edomite supremacy. Take land, okay, and do all kind of wickedness. You see, even the policies now, you see, it's all aimed at, hating Jake, getting Jake out of the picture, Jake being the problem. And a lot of people are kind of taken back that, you look at all of these hateful acts that are being pushed and that's being established under a so-called Christian regime. But this is what they always were, as we're going to get into. As you see this individual here, Matt Walsh, which he's just another, Captain Kirk in the making. They all, there's a lot of them, okay? And, when Elon Musk was along with Trump, one of the talking points was that the white race is, needs to basically, restore itself to dominance. Stop feeling sorry about your past. Stop letting people call you racist and feel, let it make you feel bad about your history and who you are, and take back, what's rightfully yours, and restore yourself to that dominant position, man. And they've passed all kind of laws that have harmed, the so-called black, so-called brown, different foreigners, and now it's kicking them in the ass. The very laws that MAGA, voted on, the H-1B and, all of these various different things, what they did with the migrants, it's coming back to bite them in the ass, man. But like they say, racism is expensive. Okay, it costs to be the boss. Now, this guy, Matt Walsh, which he's heavy into the pseudoscience, the 13% of the people do the majority of the crime, and painting you niggas as just the absolute worst, black, there's no black fathers in the house, all of this. But when it comes time to, accept of their fault in the whole grand scheme of things, the Edomite, he don't want nothing to do with it. He even wants to take slavery out of history books and out of schools and say, let's look at the more positive side of what we did. We brought Christianity to the earth. Leftists are enraged by the spectacle yesterday. They are calling us Christian nationalists. They say that we want to usher in a new era of Christian nationalists. They claim that we are more radicalized than we've ever been, and they're 100% correct on all accounts. Okay? Another guy, what the left must come to grips with is that our great nation is based on Judeo-Christian values, and that will never change. This does not mean you have to be a Jew or American Christian to be an American. Rather, regardless of your faith, you must submit to that reality. Okay? And these devils are just the biggest Christians in the world right now, man. This Captain Kirk's funeral was just it was just a big Christian nationalist rally, and it was a big joke, man. I will say that much. I won't say a lot, but I will say that looking at you devils, as you near your end, man, you are absolutely all over the place, man. You are absolutely tacky. Let's get Psalms 50 and 16, okay? But unto the wicked, God said, what hast thou to do to declare my statutes, or that thou shouldest take my covenant in thy mouth, seeing as though thou hatest instruction? And you devils have hated instruction and casted the words of the Lord behind thee. But you use this white Jesus figure and you being a Christian to forward Edomite supremacy. And I want to start off here, and we're going to get into a few videos sort of get into what is Christian nationalism and why do you see these devils, tapping back into that? It's Edomite supremacy forwarded, with the sword and many other things to, manipulate the mind and present himself as this, a loving character. But what follows him is nothing but destruction, death, rape, robbery, murder, disease, warfare. That's what Christians did. That's what Western Judeo-Christianity was established upon. Okay.
People say that they're genuinely shocked at the amount of white Christians who are defending and supporting and crying for Charlie Kirk. And they're like, when did Christianity become supportive racism? Why are these Christians supporting somebody who was so anti-Christ? When did this happen? Why do these people who are supposedly Christian support someone so vile and so hateful? And when did the church become this? The church has always been this.
That's it.
For at least 700 years, at least. I'm more inclined to say 1,000 years, but I'll cap it at 700 until I learn more. For at least 700 years, Europeans, initially Anglo-Saxons, and then it spread to the rest of the Western Europeans, have used the Bible.
The original Anglo-Saxons were Jakes. The angelic sons of Isaac is what that means. Okay?
As not only the main pillar of white supremacy, but also the primary weapon of it. Columbus and the King of Spain and Queen of Spain were praising God as they slaughtered Native Americans. And that is what I have been trying to tell y'all since I've started reading this book on here. Do not underestimate the extent to which these white Christian people are committed to pledging allegiance to power. That is their only belief system.
That's it. That's the belief. A particular, elite of Edomites should rule over the masses and have all of the power. Okay? Even a lot of their own people lose out in this system.
That is their only concern. I've been trying to tell you this. Other creators have been trying to tell you this. People who have been on their deconstruction journeys have been trying to tell you this. There's a reason why when people start deconstructing, when specifically white people start deconstructing what they were taught in their conservative Christian household, they also start stepping away from the church. Like they start deconstructing whiteness and deconstructing the church at the same time, because at no point in modern history have those two not been inextricably linked. This is what Remick was trying to tell you in Sinners. And sitting here thinking that white Christians supporting and revering and praising and mourning a blatant Nazi racist, thinking that that's new, gives them more power. Because while you're caught up in the shock and the awe and the disgust and the disappointment of something that's been around for hundreds of years, as long as anybody's ancestors can remember, they're continuing on with what their ancestors did. And while you're standing there, mouth agape, baffled by how these people can say that they're worshiping God and worshiping a racist at the same time, they are rummaging through your stocks and stores. The KKK used to burn crosses in people's yards.
And you're told to get over that. They're now trying to erase this history from the history, books and records. You're told to get over it. But these Edomites don't get over a goddamn thing. And won't. Look how they're responding. You know, this whole, I forgive. Like you had this guy's wife, do this speech where she, say I forgive, the shooter, and oh man, if you just see it, if you see it, just the acting, man. I don't. Anyway, you got Tucker Carlson comparing this guy to Jesus. All right, implying that, all right, the tiny tops. You can't call them small hats no more because they're gonna pick up on that. So the tiny tops, the 48ers, took him out. Just this whole thing is very interesting. But let's go back here. Oh, let me play this. This is the funeral.
Kirk truly was. He was a missionary with a noble spirit and a great, great purpose. He did not hate his opponents. He wanted the best for them. That's where I disagreed with Charlie. I hate my opponent. And I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry. I am sorry, Eric.
First and foremost, that's so gross, but expected, not surprised in the least bit that he said that. Secondly, Charlie Kirk was an unrepentant racist.
And there's nothing wrong with being a racist. All right? That just means you advocate for your race above others. It's just that the Edomite, the so-called white man's form of racism, has always been associated with him using that to, rape, rob, murder, poison, sterilize, and many other things.
Ultimately, he was a Christian evangelist. And it actually reminds me of my favorite story ever. So it's about 2,000 years ago in Jerusalem, and Jesus shows up and he starts talking about the people in power. And he starts doing the worst thing that you can do, which is telling the truth about people. And they hate it. And they just go bonkers. They hate it. And they become obsessed with making him stop. This guy's got to stop talking. We've got to shut this guy up. And I can just sort of picture the scene in a lamplit room with a bunch of guys sitting around eating hummus, thinking about what do we do about this guy telling the truth about us? We must make him stop talking. And there's always one guy with the bright idea, and I can just hear him say, I've got an idea, why don't we just kill him? That'll shut him up. That'll fix the problem.
Oh my God, it's so weird.
It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Everything
Okay, let
is
me just tell
inverted.
you this. If you're thinking, okay, well, did he or did he not just accuse the Jews of killing Charlie Kirk?
All of these Edomites just need to shut the fuck up. All of y'all. All of y'all, man. Let's go to this. This was the funeral,
A veil over the forces of wickedness and evil. They cannot imagine what they have awakened. They cannot conceive of the army that they have arisen in all of us. Because we stand for what is good, what is virtuous, what is noble.
So you don't hear any turn the other cheek, take the low. Okay, you don't hear, you don't see really any principles of Jesus really being taught, right? What you're witnessing is they're looking for a reason to retaliate. They're looking for a reason to bring the sword. They're looking for a reason, all right, to bring back the colonial spirit in which they dominated the nations using Christianity as one of the means of justification, okay?
And to those trying to incite violence against us,
which really is just Edomite dominance. We're better than you.
those trying to foment hatred against us, what do you have? You have nothing. You are nothing. You are wickedness, you are jealousy, you are envy, you are hatred. You are nothing. You can build nothing. You can produce nothing. You can create nothing. We are the ones who build.
And this is near the stadium near Phoenix. And you know the story of Phoenix. The phoenix that is a mythological bird that rises from the ashes, and they use that in there. There was a lot of occult ties to this whole thing as well. But as you can see, this is what it always was in the first place. They're just looking for, and they're just using this as an excuse to bring it back. Okay?
We are the ones who create. We are the ones who lift up humanity.
To quote George W. Bush, that's some weird shit. I mean, that is just, and when I heard the audience applause, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, and this is what it always was. What do you think he's talking about?
The KKK was a Christian organization. Entire church congregations have chased black people out of their church, beaten them, and lynched them on Sunday morning. And you thought these people were worshiping the same God as you? In the Bible, it says, thou shalt put no other God before me. So you admit there are other gods. And if there are other gods, do you think that these enslavers would have given their slaves the same God that they were praying to? Stop allowing these people to shock you. That's why they want to take away education. So that you don't read books like this, so that you don't know your own history, and more importantly, so that you don't know their history. They don't want you to know who they are. Because the devil's biggest defense is a skeptical or ignorant or confused public.
Yep, gray areas, which is what this, Judeo-Christian rhetoric has brought. A gray area. Okay, no true biblical principles are being taught. There's no godliness in the history of America. There's no godliness in the present of America. There were certain, aspects of early America, that things were a little bit more family oriented. But the foundation of this place was always the sword, was always Edomite supremacy. And that's what they're returning to. And we told you that that's what they was going to do. The prophets told you that this was coming. We told you the pseudoscience and all of these various different things that got them to where they are is what they're going to tap back into. And this is what you're seeing with this Christian nationalist rhetoric, which Christian nationalist is both a political ideology and a cultural movement that blends Christianity, particularly Protestant Christianity in the U.S., which that's what vocab Malone stems from. Okay. And when you see him coming to the Israelite camps trying to force, his version of Jesus on you, and that's the same thing they did to the Native Americans. It's just now he doesn't have the physical sword, and he's a little bit more deceptive. But they're trying to force their belief on you. This is what they've done throughout the four corners of the earth. And these people, again, don't really care about the Bible. They don't live godly lives. They don't, celebrate, biblical holy days. So a lot of these so-called Christians are getting ready to celebrate Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas. But they'll mock you Israelites for trying to keep the Passover and tell you the laws are done away with and all these various different things, man. These people don't care about the scriptures. They're cultural Christians, which ultimately America was tied to Christianity from the sense of Edomite supremacy and not the foundation of the apostles and prophets. Okay? It says with it's a cultural movement that blends Christianity, particularly Protestant Christianity in the U.S., with national identity, often claiming that the nation was founded as or should function as a Christian nation. It's less about personal faith and more about using Christianity as a cultural and political framework to shape laws, identity, and public life. It's used for the right wing at the end of the day. Nothing more. Okay, the right wingers use it, as a talking point, as an argument, as a basis to draw, one, person into their. It's not used as a means to forward the teachings of Yahweh Shai and the prophecies and things like that. And it's rooted in, as we'll show you, all right, that you have to bless, all right, the state of Israel. Okay? And we're seeing that happening big right before our very eyes, man. All right? The myth of Christian founding, it often claims America was explicitly founded as a Christian nation and has strayed from its divine destiny, and they blame the left for that. Okay? Let's see here. Early roots, colonial America. And what does colonial, okay, bring to you? What does that bring to mind, the colonial periods? Okay, the colonization. They call him the colonizer. Okay. Let's go here to Psalms 55 and 21. It says, the words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet they were drawn swords. Okay? And this is how he came. He came, you know, with Edomite Jesus and a sword, man. Talking soft, but ultimately he had war in his heart. You see? And we're starting to see what the true problem of the earth is through just all you have to do is really just sit back and watch Esau crash out. Okay? Sirach chapter 10 and 10. The physician cutteth off a long disease, and he that today is a king, tomorrow shall die. So this big disease, all right, which Christianity is one of the biggest diseases that the earth has ever felt. All right, in a way it's been presented, even what your so-called slave masters presented to the so-called slaves or the slaves. Okay, it was a broken narrative. Okay, the Puritans and Pilgrims believed, and what are the Pilgrims known for doing? What are the Puritans known for doing? You know, conquering and cleaning up and destroying the savage nations. And yes, pseudoscience is what backed these beliefs, not biblical principles, man. They just used the biblical principle to say that we deserve the land. It was always Edomite supremacy, as this chick is saying. And this is what today's version of Christianity stems from. That's why the apostles beautifully call it plantation Christianity. It comes from the oppressor. It's not a message of salvation to the true biblical Israelites. It's a tool of control. It's a weapon to forward their agenda, man, and to further confuse you. And under their rule of so-called being Christians, there is no fear of the Lord. It's become secular. It's joined with the world. It's tacky. It's nasty. It's terroristic. Christians are some of the worst people you could ever be around. You'll have more of a decent conversation with an atheist than a Christian. They're some of the dumbest people on the planet Earth, man. Because God is not taken serious. Because the people who proclaim to be like Donald Trump, talking about 2 Corinthians is my favorite book. Come on, man. What person who reads the Bible says 2 Corinthians? Come on, man. They asked him what's his favorite, but 2 Corinthians. The Puritans believed they were creating a new Israel, a covenant nation chosen by God, and that was the Edomite, trying to get that birthright back. This planted the seed of the idea that America had a divine mission, a mission by God, which it did fulfill prophecy. But this is what it was more so. Let's get the book of Revelation 13 and 7. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints. So power was given unto you, and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. Verse 6, and he opened his mouth in blasphemy against the Most High, to blaspheme his name, to blaspheme his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. He lied about everything. He didn't use his power to really uplift the scriptures and biblical principles. But he'll use the Bible to say, well, I'm against the trans. I'm against, to have an argument. But nothing really gets done. Like right now, as much as the right say they're against abortions, are you still able to do them? Well, he left it up to the state. Are they? Really? In what states is it banned? Maybe a few, but not really like that. It's just a point of contention, man. It's not really the people don't know what scripture to go to say that that's wrong. People don't know what scripture to go to condemn, the Labiquita community. People don't know the legacy of the prophets. People don't get into prophecy. People don't know the true sacrifice of Yahweh. It's just his blood and all this shit. You don't see no real mindset towards the scriptures of Yahweh in America like that. People are cultural Christians. They don't even have a biblical worldview. They don't view the world around them pertaining to prophecy. Now some of them are trying to, because it's evident that the MOTB is coming, but other than that, they don't live their lives in any righteous way. So power was given unto him, right? But this doesn't fulfill the role of the righteous, man. This fulfills the lot of the wicked. All right. While the Constitution was written as a secular document, many leaders used biblical language in public life. The myth later grew that the founding fathers intended U.S. to be explicitly Christian, which is bullshit. Okay. It was supposed to be a country that benefited Edomites. It's just that now it's been hijacked by a certain group of Edomites, and they're undermining the rest of the Edomites. But let's see here. During the colonial period, the Native Americans were devastated by disease, displacement, and warfare, slavery. So I asked, was slavery and white supremacy a big part of Christian nationalists? Yes, slavery and white supremacy were deeply tied to the development of Christian nationalists in America, especially from the colonial period onward. Okay, the Spanish, the French, the British, and all they've done is forward the sword. Those weren't godly, nations and rulerships and governments. Okay? Slaveholders promoted a theology where slavery was not only permitted, but supposedly beneficial for enslaved Israelites because it exposed them to Christianity. So this is, what Matt Walsh is on when you read his talking points. We brutalized you, but we made you better. You weren't, progressive. You were a no people. You were not bringing any fruit to the earth. Okay? So there's this big, divide. Oh man, this is crazy. Their hero, our hero. It's just nothing but division. And they'll use this figure to, say we forgive, but Esau ain't forgiving a goddamn thing. Esau is getting ready to wage war, as he's always done. Now, let's listen to the rest of this, and then we'll get a few more points.
What these people are doing, mourning a monster, while millions around the world suffer at the hands of monsters like him, is not shocking. It is not new. And if it takes you off guard, you have not been paying close enough attention. And instead of getting mad and getting sad and getting depressed, you just need to get educated. The reason that they're crying over Charlie Kirk, but they're not crying over those babies in Gaza, and they're not crying over the American babies here, and they're not crying over the way black people have been treated since the beginning, And they're not crying about the fact that they dwindled the Native American population from 100% to 1%.
Yeah, they you know, they'll say, well, the Native Americans didn't know how to, they didn't even have a will yet. We gave you a will in the internet. So yeah, while it was, you know, yeah, we did do a lot of killing, but you know, yeah, according to the science, it was needed. That's what Christians did.
The reason that they're not crying over that is because they worship power. And groups who historically have no power are not their concern unless they can use them to make themselves look good. Missionaries, soup kitchens. Violence is a weapon that, in their minds, only the group in power is allowed to use. That's why they take Christmas card photos with AK-47s, because it is a show of power. And so when they watched Charlie Kirk, a white man, die like a black man, it threw off their equilibrium, because to them, only people who don't have power are supposed to die like that. Do not underestimate these people. Do not let them tell you that they are good people. They are not. And now that the veil is thinning, and now that every single thing is being revealed gradually, because otherwise we would lose our minds more than we already are, now that you see what you see, and you hear what you hear, and you know what you know, and you feel what you feel, do not ever forget it. Do not allow your children to forget it, because that's how they got us the first time. They put on this really good image. They put up this really good front. They have an incredible PR machine.
What does the scripture say? No marvel. 2 Corinthians 11:14, and no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. He's able to present himself as an angel of light. This is Psalms 73:6. Therefore pride compasseth them about as a chain, and violence covereth them as a garment. That's what they've covered themselves with, violence, as a garment covers a body. That's how violence has covered Edomite supremacy. Yet you need to forgive and forget when their whole ideology is rooted in constantly reminding you how goddamn degenerate you are. And we get it. Niggas are degenerate, but there's a story. There's a history tied to that you're a part of. Their eyes stand out with fatness. They have more than heart could wish. They are corrupt and speak wickedly concerning oppression. They speak loftily. See, they speak wickedly concerning oppression.
And they tricked you into believing that they were the moral standard.
Right.
The moral center.
Yep.
They're the opposite. The white Christian church has colonized, brutalized, decimated every ethnic and religious group you can think of, from poor Englishmen in the 1600s to the Irish a little bit before that, to the Native Americans.
Which a lot of the Irish were Jake. You had what you call the Black Irish. All right, but that's another history for another time.
To Africans, Black Americans, Caribbeans. I'm talking about in it. Do not let these people tell you one thing and show you another. That Christian title don't mean shit. Get educated. And follow my playlist.
All right, let's go here.
What is that to you?
Yeah, so I think there's lots of different ways you could describe it. The way I define it is a little broader.
He's defining Christian nationalism.
I say Christian nationalism is the worship of power, whether it's social power, economic power, political power, in the name of Christ. And I think it's relevant to describe it this way because it's something we've struggled with within the Christian church from the very beginning. So the first followers of Jesus didn't even call themselves Christians. They called themselves the Way.
No, they call themselves follower of the Mashiach, which Mashiach is the word for Messiah. They acknowledged him as the Messiah. So they were followers of the Mashiach. They weren't called Christians until the book of Acts. Let's get that. When they were in Antioch, as a church was founded in Antioch. All right. As they were teaching out there. Acts 11:26. And when he had found him, they brought him to Antioch, And it came to pass that a whole year they assembled themselves with the church and taught much people, and the disciples were called Christians first in Antioch. And there were many Christ, and there was a lot of mocking going on in Antioch to the church of Yahweh Shai, and they were just like, oh, there go those Christians, which you had Serapis Christians, you had many Christ. They were followers of the Mashiach, the true Messiah for the nation of Israel. You see? But these were Israelites, all right, ultimately following the Messiah. Okay? And they didn't go around doing what you so-called Christians are doing. They had standards. They kept the holy days of the law. Okay? They did the Passover, the Feast of Tabernacles. Okay, Pentecost, Hanukkah. They didn't celebrate no goddamn Easter and Christmas. Even when you see the word Easter in the scriptures, because remember, this was translated, as you see, it says, after Easter, they brought him up to the people. When you look up the word, what is it really talking about? What was it originally talking about before it was translated? Pashcha, Passover, Pashach, the Paschal sacrifice, the Passover, the Paschal feast, the Feast of Passover, extending from the 14th, which is the middle of a Hebrew Israelite calendar month, to the 20th. So the Passover, okay, is the 14th day of the first month at evening. So that's a holy day. They weren't going around celebrating Easter. Well, what is Easter? So why do you always see these Christians celebrating Easter and high and egg? What is that associated with? Well, if you knew the origin of it, you would know that it's associated with idol gods that have nothing to do with the scriptures. Because really, all of these devils are part of these different, secret societies and left-handed, occult, demonic groups that do all kind of sexual perversion activities and wickedness, man. They're a bunch of deceivers.
Because their crucified teacher had taught them a different way of being human, a different way of relating to other people, of understanding your relationship to neighbor and to God. And this transformed them. They became these peculiar people, is how the Bible describes it, because they didn't participate in the economy, the military, the culture. They were persecuted because they turned the world upside down. Again, that's how it's described in Acts. But 300 years after that, after the Roman Empire crucified Jesus, Emperor Constantine made Christianity the official religion of that very same empire.
It wasn't technically the same empire. It was the Eastern Roman Empire. The Western Roman Empire collapsed. And the Eastern Roman Empire, which was ruled by Jakes for a period of 1,000 years, they call them the Dark Ages. Dark people were ruling, but, because they were Israelites, and Constantine was basically a politician. He wasn't really a follower of Yahweh Shai like that. If anything, he was pagan. Okay, and used Christianity as a means, all right, to Catholicize or make it universal, where everybody can bring their God under this one, Savior Jesus that accepts everything. It wasn't the true Messiah of the Bible. But again, he used it as a form of power. Okay? It wasn't the true, church like that, which, they were arguing certain biblical principles, and there were certain councils and things like that. But Constantine himself was really a pagan.
The same empire that crucified Jesus. So this is 300 years later, and now Christianity is the official sponsor of the empire, of Western civilization.
Do you think Constantine was a Christian, like legitimately, or do you think that he was using it?
It's always hard to tell with politicians, and I say this as a politician myself.
When was Constantine baptized?
Well, he was baptized, I don't know the year, but he was baptized after he had this vision before a decisive battle, when he saw the cross and decided that his soldiers would put the cross as part of their emblem, and they won that battle, right? Which, who knows if it was because of his vision or not. But it started a trend which we've struggled with for literally, more than 1,500 years, of powerful people, emperors, billionaires, dictators, megachurch pastors, using religion to protect their own wealth and power.
That's it.
And to me, Christian nationalism is just the latest iteration of that, whether it's the Ten Commandments bill, whether it's the bill, I don't know if you read about this, a bill that we passed that allows schools to replace school counselors with untrained, unsupervised religious chaplains. Sometimes people who go online and become a chaplain within 5 minutes. That to me, again, is an example of Christian nationalism. It's using the state, it's using political power to elevate one religious tradition over all the others. It's using governmental power to dominate our neighbors instead of loving them as ourselves, which is exactly what we're called to do as Christians. And then, of course, most recently we saw this bill that defunded public schools here in Texas to subsidize private Christian schools. And to me, again, that is a bill that's right in the middle of this Christian nationalist movement to erode the separation of church and state and force a certain interpretation of Christianity on everybody against their wills.
Yeah, there's this narrative that this is a Christian nation. And this is it was founded as a Christian nation. And I think they call upon that.
Yeah.
When they're making these decisions and talking about it in this very particular way.
Yeah, and I think no one would disagree that Christianity was influential in the founding of this country, and it's still influential. I mean, it's suffused throughout our culture.
You see, he's drunk. This dude is drunk, but you chew the meat and spit out the bones. Like he said, it's used to gain power.
Politics, it is a central part of who we are as a nation. But I think it's really important to clarify that we were not founded.
See, these people are cultural Christians. Let's type in, what is a cultural Christian? And you got some of these devils who study and really get into certain historical standpoints, but they don't live their lives. All right. And they're not calling on the throne of David to be established. All right. A cultural Christian is someone who identifies with Christianity mainly as a part of their heritage, upbringing, or cultural identity rather than out of a personal faith or spiritual conviction. In other words, being a Christian for them is more about tradition and community than about belief in Yahweh Shai, prayer, and biblical teachings, and living by biblical teachings. Okay, that's what you see here more than anything. Okay? In the United States, some identify as Christian because they were raised in church or live in a Christian-influenced society, even if they don't actively believe. They don't read the scriptures. They don't make life decisions based upon biblical teachings and the scriptures. They're just talking. Okay, it's a part of the wine of Babylon. Okay, and this is what we were into before we woke up to the truth. This is why they are so uncomfortable with you coming into your own, calling on the names, calling yourself an Israelite. See, they didn't give a damn what we were doing when we were just so-called believing in white Jesus and being Christians and going to church. They didn't care what we did. We were committing adultery. We were being niggas. We were abusing ourselves. Our diets were horrible. Tattoos all over. No one cared when niggas were just Christians. But now that you're Israelites, they got something to say. And Christianity has not condemned evil like that. They have not condemned wickedness. Okay? Again, you got 2.2 billion Christians. You got billions of Catholics. And there has not been a significant wage or war against evil. Instead, they are mingled amongst it. Now let's go here.
The God of Christian nationalism is going to believe it's the greatest threat to democracy for years now. I've had the chance to interview almost every major scholar on the topic. I've read countless books, and I've kept up to date on the sociological data, but I'm not sure if I ever made a piece of content that gave you the breakdown of what Christian nationalism is and how much of the population believes it. And I don't think I've explained why I think that this topic is not being talked about enough in mainstream and progressive media spaces. So That's what this piece is all about. When I say Christian nationalism, what exactly am I talking about, and why the heck am I always talking about it? Well, the short answer is this. Because in my opinion, it's the primary reason that we are in the political mess that we find ourselves in, and yet most people have never heard the term or the names of the people working behind the scenes that have given the Trump administration the directives that it's currently enacting. Think about it. In just a few short months, Trump has gutted major parts of our government, including the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID, which is the principal U.S. agency to extend assistance to countries recovering from disaster, trying to escape poverty, and engaging in democratic reforms. The Department of Education, which ensures that civil rights laws are followed in public schools, has been mostly dismantled. An unelected billionaire and his minions were given unfettered access to government systems in the name of eradicating waste. And fact check, they haven't done that yet. Legal immigrants are literally being kidnapped in broad daylight. Some are being deported, and the Trump administration is openly defying court orders to bring them home. Trump tried to erase parts of the Constitution through an executive order declaring that birthright citizenship should be null and void. Books about Black history and the Holocaust are being banned. The acknowledgement that trans people exist is being erased from government websites. And this is just the tip of the iceberg.
See, and when a guy like him, he comes from a left-wing perspective. So you're going to hear things that are like, cringe, but he's breaking it down to a degree, you know?
And it's only been a few months since Trump has taken office. Clearly, there was a plan, or maybe a blueprint, if you will, but who gave it to him and what did they actually want? Welcome to Christian Nationalism 101. I want to make this video as accessible as possible, so I'm going to keep it at a pretty high-level overview and zoom in where needed to give you examples of this ideology in action. So when I say Christian nationalism, what exactly am I talking about? Well, to be honest, it's complicated, and there is not one set definition. Think about it like a house with many rooms, and just like a house, there is a foundation that everything is built on, but also like a house, there are different rooms that are distinct from each other and serve a different purpose despite being contained inside of a structure. Today, we'll take a brief tour of this house to give you a general understanding of what Christian nationalism is, in hopes that you'll be able to see why I believe it's the biggest threat to American democracy that we currently face.
See, he says it's a threat to American democracy, you know, but he himself is a Christian. You see, all of them are in a big bag of confusion. And Salaki, I'm a little tired, a little drawn down today, but we're getting through it.
Let's start with the foundation, and for that we turn to the Public Religion Research Institute, one of the premier organizations researching Christian nationalism's popularity. They use 5 statements in their surveys, asking respondents to agree or disagree on a sliding scale, and these 5 statements are the foundation that Christian nationalism is built upon. They are the following. First, the U.S. government should declare America a Christian nation. Second, U.S. laws should be based on Christian values.
Where is that happening at? Okay, outside of political arguments and debating, and people up and down the street with signs, where are laws passed that represent Christian values? Because the church, all right, in the latter days was said to be established as a government, a mountain that all nations would flow to get the understanding. And then you support the Zionist state of Israel, right? Let's get it again. Okay, I've been meaning to download this video. GMS Watchman. The beloved brother Yashalam. As a matter of fact, I'm going to download it today, but
reason was,
this is the Red Shield. That's what this name means, admitting that they created, all right, as we always tell you, that whole state of this, okay, is nothing more than a forwarding of British colonization. And again, the colonial periods, all right, were big in Christian nationalists. Amongst any other, you know, these devils, they dibble and dabble into all manner of confusion. They're all over the place. All right, they're everything. All right, but yeah, we gotta, you know, you check this video out, and America supports that. So you have a Christian country supporting a group of people saying that they're a fulfillment of the promise given unto Abraham. They never really mention Isaac and Jacob, but ultimately that land belongs to them. And they, you know, under divine, you know, order, can take the land from the people that were there using the sword, okay, and ethnically cleansing. This is aspects of Christian nationalist as well, Christian nationalism as well. Okay. Let's see. Let's go back.
Third, if the U.S. moves away from our Christian foundations, we will not have a country anymore. 4, being Christian is an important part of being truly American. And 5, God has called Christians to exercise dominion over all areas of American society. Christian nationalism is not centered around a unifying Christian theology or doctrine. Instead, Christian nationalism is more focused on the role that the Christian God plays in America and the obligation the believer has to keep America Christian in order for God to keep his blessing on the country. If you look closely, you'll notice a unifying theme between these 5 statements: power and control, because at its core, Christian nationalism is about maintaining power and control over society and politics. So what's the percentage of the US population that would agree with these statements? Well, like most things, it's a spectrum, not a binary. PRRI found that Americans fall into 4 categories on the Christian nationalism scale: adherents, sympathizers, skeptics, or rejectors. Christian nationalism adherents either agree or completely agree with all 5 statements in the scale. This group includes about 10% of Americans. Sympathizers agree with most statements of the scale, but they are less likely than adherents to completely agree. This is about 20% of Americans. Skeptics disagree with most statements in the scale, but they are less likely than rejectors to completely disagree. This group includes 37% of Americans. Skeptics completely disagree with all 5 statements in the scale, and this group includes 30% of Americans. So the composition of America looks like this. And if you're wondering if Christian nationalism is mostly found in right-wing spaces, you'd be correct. According to PRRI's research, a majority of Republicans either qualify as Christian nationalist adherents or sympathizers, and 2/3 of Americans who most trust far-right TV news sources qualify as Christian nationalism adherents or sympathizers. The same goes for folks who most trust Fox News. Here's the good part. Most Americans disagree with or flat-out reject Christian nationalism. But here's the bad part. Christian nationalists are well-funded, militant, and really do not care about the opinion of the majority. They are given unlimited money by billionaires who have helped them gain unprecedented access to the levers of power in American politics. For the rest of this video, when I refer to Christian nationalists, I'm mostly referring to the Christian nationalist adherents who represent 10% of the population. A few examples would be Charlie Kirk, founder of Turning Point USA, Ali Stuckey, host of Relatable via the Blaze Network, Steve Bannon, founder of Breitbart, and Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. Christian nationalists are extreme. They are motivated by an authoritarian understanding of the Bible and the Christian faith. The 10% will stop at nothing to make America a Christian nation ruled by them with everyone else under their foot.
That's why we get called, well, you're a Christian nationalist. You want the kingdom to be the government. Yes. You want God to come and overtake the government. Yes. You want Christians to be the only ones that, yes, we do. We wouldn't be at this.
Imagine what people like him do behind closed doors. You had a bunch of Christian nationalists on the Epstein list. How about that? And since you're so Christian, why at that funeral didn't that list come out?
Disciple of Jesus if we didn't believe that? We want God to be in control of everything? We want believers to be the ones writing the laws? Yes, guilty as charged. I mean, it's funny when I meet Christians where I'm like, I'm like, have you read the Great Commission? Like, this is actually what we want. Guilty.
Christian nationalist adherents do not like democracy. They reject pluralism and multiculturalism, and they have no major qualms about using or endorsing violence when they deem it necessary. Just look at January 6th, for example. Like all humans, Christian nationalists have an origin story that lays a foundation for how they see the world and their place in it. The story for the Christian nationalist goes something like this. America was founded as a Christian nation based on Judeo-Christian principles. Because of this, God blessed America more than any other nation in the history of the world, making her exceptional. God has a special plan for America to be a shining city on a hill for the world to see, but that's being threatened by the evil forces of liberalism, secularism, feminism, sexual liberation, Marxism, and communism.
And the elites fund both sides. This is a sick group of people, man.
Put succinctly, America is under attack, and these forces have taken root in family, religion, education, media, entertainment, business, and government. As Christians, we have to do everything we can to bring God back to America, because if not, God will bring more judgment on the country
and this is why they're able to appease to, Bible believers. Even Jake, who's a Bible believer, he'll side with the right wing. Okay, and say, yeah, this makes more sense.
will no longer have a nation. Christian nationalism often conflates natural or planned tragedies with God's judgment. An infamous example of this is what Jerry Falwell, the founder of Liberty University, said when 9/11 happened.
What we saw on Tuesday, as terrible as it is, could be minuscule if in fact God continues to lift the curtain and allow the enemies of America to give us probably what we deserve. I really believe that the pagans and the abortionists and the feminists and the gays and the lesbians who are actively trying to make that an alternative lifestyle, the ACLU, People for the American Way, all of them who tried to secularize America, I point the thing in their face and say, you helped this happen. Well, I totally concur.
For Jerry, there's a reason God allowed 9/11 to happen. It's God's judgment on a nation for allowing demonic ideologies and actions to thrive in America, which in this case are women's rights, gay rights, and civil rights for all Americans. Because Christian nationalism believes that America was founded as a Christian
And civil rights was duped into that whole lump. This is where you Israelites are being led to the slaughter.
nation, they believe their religious beliefs should be privileged in the public square. I should note here that the word Christian is doing a lot of heavy lifting because Christianity is not monolithic. Christians have been arguing about pretty much everything since the origins of the religion.
I mean, look how many different churches there are. You know, here it is, Vocab Malone comes, well, you guys don't agree. You have this sect of Hebrew Israelism. You have this, you have the you know, the Torah only Hebrew Israelite. You have this, the black Hebrew Israelite, you know, but how many different denominations are there of Christianity? How many different churches are there when you go to so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native American neighborhoods? How many churches are there in different denominations? Then you got the Catholic Church, full of idols.
To date, there are three major Christian schisms: the Catholic Church, the Eastern Orthodox Church, and the Protestant Church. And each one of these schisms has schisms inside of it, and there's schisms inside of that. So when Christian nationalists say that America was founded as a Christian nation, that word Christian is loaded with assumptions about which Christianity is being referenced.
Exactly.
In this case, it's a Christianity built on American white supremacy and theology.
There you go. That's what it is. That's what they're trying to tap back into. And they don't want to hide it anymore.
It might sound extreme, but it's true. Books such as The Bible Told Them So by J. Russell Hawkins, White Evangelical Racism by Anthea Butler, and Fever in the Heartland by Timothy Egan all demonstrate this. And if you want real-world examples, ask yourself why right-wing media was against Black Lives Matter and supports Trump's illegal deportations of...
Because Black Lives Matter was a damn farce. Funded by the left wing. Okay?
brown-skinned people. Why do you think Trump labeled...
And let's not forget that Joe Biden had immigrants locked in cages. Let's not forget Obama's, getting the immigrant, meeting them at the gate, meeting them at the border, and turning their ass around, man. See, all of you devils are guilty of putting hell on Jake. It's just that the left was able, via the after the Civil War, Jake was, pretty much a right winger, a Republican. The Republicans freed Jake, but around the Great Depression, around that time, the left started to promise Jake all kinds of this and this and that. None of it ever panned out. The New Deal. Okay? There's so much.
MS-13 as a terrorist organization, but pardoned the very white January 6th insurrectionists who actually terrorized the nation by trying to overthrow the election results. When Christian nationalists say that America was founded as a Christian nation, they are regurgitating a key talking point that is a myth. I know that might be jarring for some of you to hear because if you were raised like I was, you were taught that America was indeed great because of our Christian heritage. But if you read the Constitution, you'll see it's very much a secular document with no mention of any religious book or deity, let alone the Christian God. And that's by design.
It says God. It acknowledges a higher power, I believe, but when you read the whole thing, there's no real biblical values or principles. Leviticus 20 and 13 wasn't used as a law.
First Amendment is a clear statement that there should be a separation between the government and religion, and that goes both ways. If you want to deep dive on this topic, check out The Founding Myth by Andrew Seidel, also a friend of the show. But let's play along and assume that America was founded as a Christian nation. What type of Christianity are we talking about? Well, considering that race-based chattel slavery was fully endorsed and defended by white Christian slave owners for hundreds of years, eventually leading to a civil war, I would say that even if we were founded as a Christian nation, we probably shouldn't brag about it given the horrors that were inflicted on black human beings in the name of God, with that legacy continuing on today.
Well, you got guys like Matt Walsh that are pretty much saying, look, you know, who gives a fuck? We don't feel bad about it. See? So, and you see they push this right-left paradigm real good. So you go to this guy's, you know, page. Now he got this thing coming out. Am I a racist? You know, October 28. Erica's speech was the most poignant and powerful public address I've ever heard in my lifetime. They're just, you know, they're just talking about her. You know, when she said, I forgive. Yeah, effing right. You Edomites are getting ready to wage war, man. You ain't forgiving a goddamn thing. They said this dude hung himself. Oh man. Yeah, if you read this dude tweets, man, he is out of there. But he's against the trans, you know, so when you watch some of his videos, you'll agree with him, but he is very much, he holds to Edomite supremacist views. This is another one. And let's not forget the pedo behavior that these Christian nationalists constantly rev up. I'll get a few more video. I'll get one more after this and I'll close it out.
The fact of the matter is that without white Protestant Christianity, slavery, the KKK, Jim Crow, lynchings, and segregation do not happen. This white Christianity is the foundation that Christian nationalism is built upon.
Domestic terrorism, school shootings, church burnings, flooding whole towns. These were Christians who did all of this.
Period. That's why some scholars call it white Christian nationalism. But the myth that America was founded as a Christian nation doesn't need to be true. It just needs to be believed. Christian nationalists use this myth to defend their views today when it comes to various culture war issues, such as abortion, LGBTQ+ rights, civil rights, the environment, women's rights, and the list goes on and on and on. They believe that America is under attack and that they are in a spiritual war with real-world consequences.
It's all part of the king coming back. That's what we're practicing for. That's why hell hates it that we're worshiping at every capital across America.
Look at this shit, man.
In their view, the God of the Bible has ordered the world a very specific way, and to go outside of the created order is to bring God's judgment on the country. Christian nationalists usually appeal to Genesis chapters 1 and 2 in the Bible to justify many of these beliefs, and I need to add that they completely misinterpret those two chapters in order to do so. This is where things can get a little more complicated, so stick with me here. Christian nationalism in many, many ways is a Christian identity, but that identity is centered around a specific cultural ideology and political framework, not a core theology. So to say this another way, what binds Christian nationalists together is not what they believe about specific Christian doctrines, but more about historical identity and political influence that leads to agreed upon outcomes. The Bible is pillaged for specific Bible verses that are used to justify why God condones their views on various issues. For example, a Christian nationalist might cite Leviticus 18:22, which says, "Do not have sexual relations with a man as one does with a woman. That is detestable." This is used as proof that being gay is a sin and goes against God's created order because the Bible is clear. And therefore, America should ban gay marriage and discourage public displays of affection between loving couples. But those same Christian nationalists will ignore Leviticus 19:19, which says in part, "Do not plant your field with two kinds of seed. Do not wear clothing woven of two kinds of material." As you'd imagine,
yeah, this is why just a true order is just needed to be set up. And I'm going to end it off here because you devils forgot your history, man. Well, a big part of our testimony is to remind you, as the scriptures say, all right, Isaiah 32:5, "The vile person shall no more be called liberal, nor the churl said to be bountiful. For the vile person will speak villainy, and his heart will work iniquity to practice hypocrisy and to utter error against the Lord." And that's all you've done is utter error against the Lord and to make the soul of the hungry thirsty. See? To constantly you put hell on Jake. Now, what am I going to? Revelation 18 says this. Okay, so that's what you see being revved back up in these devils, man. You know, and that a devil in that spirit is a dangerous devil. This is the book of Revelation 18:5. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. So the Lord is remembering your iniquities, and that's a big part of our testimony, which is why you see this devil, trying to, weaponize the laws, using that left-right paradigm, okay, to take away the rights of people speaking certain things.
Are taught, but not history. It's well known. It's a well-known issue that African Americans, black people in America, so-called, don't know their history. That they're cut off from the history of Africa, and even the history.
And we're Israelites. Okay, Africa is not the homeland of the Israelites, though we were there, and we did great things there. Okay, Jerusalem is the home of the Israelites.
Everything that they did and everything that was done to them in America. That's why you have Black History Month, right? So this is something that everyone knows about. Everyone is aware.
And Black History Month doesn't address the truth of who we are. It's a snare. Civil rights itself was a snare to lead our people into a burning house and to make their cause anti-Messiah. All right, though it had undertones of liberation. So with our so-called liberation, we were warring against the Lord and undermining his will, undermining his son at the end of the day, crying to be equal with your enemy. The scriptures say this in Proverbs 3:33 or 31, envy not the oppressor and choose none of his ways. Civil rights was rooted in you envying him and wanting to be equal with him and sit and drink out of his fountain and want him to accept you as a human being,
Aware of this issue. But the truth is that so-called white people don't know their history either.
Right.
Their history in America or their history in Europe. Americans generally don't know history, which is incredibly useful when you consider the fact that history repeats itself. It's incredibly useful to keep the entire population in a state of amnesia, so that the whole country operates like the main character in that film Memento, So you keep doing the same things that you've always done, and you never understand that you're actually doing the things that history has already judged to be crimes. You understand? You can do it as if there's no context, as if there's no history, as if there's no pattern. That's the whole point of approaching current events from an ahistorical perspective. You don't want anyone to see the pattern. You want to be able to do things that have already been condemned by history, but you want to keep doing them anyway, as if you don't know that they're contemptible. You don't know that they are condemned actions, just like Donald Trump now invoking the Alien Enemies Act in reference to mass deportations and so on. Okay, this is the same act that put tens of thousands of Japanese Americans into internment camps in World War II, and for which the United States government eventually had to provide compensation and eventually had to even apologize for doing it. You see, it is something completely contemptible that you did, but you want to repeat it. So you forget your history. You forget history so you can repeat history without blame. Both so-called white people and so-called black people in America don't know their history. Both have been told lies about the past, about their respective pasts. And the only reason for that is for the purpose of maintaining the continuity of the contemptible reality of how that society operates. Amnesia and fictional histories serve as a preventative measure against change, against reform, against rehabilitation. America chooses to live like it's in the movie Groundhog Day. You pretend that only today exists over and over and over again. And because of this forced amnesia, because of this deliberate suppression of historical awareness, the people in America don't even recognize when they're reliving their own past. They think that they're facing something new. They think that they're responding to some unprecedented crisis every time. If you have no recollection where the road leads that you're on, then you'll keep walking it again and again, never realizing that it has already led you into disaster after disaster, dozens of times before. And this is exactly the condition that the rulers in America want, that the elite of America want. Not just for black people, not just for so-called white people, but for everyone. Because the most effective way to ensure that a crime continues is to make sure that it is never recognized as a crime. To make sure that every time you commit that crime, it feels like the first time. And
this is what Esau is on. And this is what he's trying to train his youth, all right, the next generation up, and the fact that there was nothing wrong with how they were established. They did no wrong. They only brought good. You know, they have a higher IQ, tap back into the pseudoscience, pull out a few statistics, all right, and jump into the NWO as the hero, all right?
So when Trump talks about invoking the Alien Enemies Act, most Americans don't hear the echoes of history from that. They don't hear the voices of the Japanese Americans who were dragged from their homes and put behind barbed wire for years and years. They don't remember that that country had to apologize for doing exactly what they're about to do again. The American mind resets every morning, and that's the perfect condition for those in power. Because if people really understood history, then they would recognize that nothing about the American system is accidental. Every aspect of it, from its racial hierarchies to its economic disparities to its unjust foreign policies, is simply the continuation of an old script, a script that has played out again and again, always leading to oppression, always leading to exploitation, always leading to war, always leading to misery. And this is why in America history isn't taught. Fiction is taught, legends are taught, myths are taught, but not history. Because real history would be dangerous. Real history would break the illusion and potentially break the cycle. So-called white people in America know a version of history. They know a story. They know a narrative that has been carefully crafted to shape how they see themselves, how they see their ancestors, how they see their nations and their place in the world, and how they see everyone else. And this ignorance, this deliberate miseducation that they have imposed upon their own people allows the same crimes to continue. What most white people in America and Europe believe about their history is not history at all. It's mythology designed to produce a specific kind of person, a person who does not feel guilty, a person who does not feel accountable, a person who does not feel responsible for ever changing anything because they don't think they're doing anything wrong.
Woo! As it said, they speak wickedly concerning oppression. Okay? They hold themselves not guilty. Zechariah 11:5, whose possessors slay them and hold themselves not guilty, and they that sell them say, blessed be the Lord. See, God is with us, for I am rich. And their own shepherds pity them not. Their own leaders ain't guiding them right. And you've paid off the majority of our leaders, what Jake deems as leaders. You've even got your hand in a lot of the pockets of these Israelite leaders today. They'll talk about that, know they're Israelites. You've constantly, whenever Jake tried to, form something for themselves, you always found yourselves infiltrating and being there. But you hold yourselves not guilty for this brutal history, man. And I mean, we didn't even get into it. All we did was say slavery, rape, rob, murder, disease. I mean, come on now. Let's get 2 Esdras 11. And this is talking about Rome, but we're living in Rome all over again. 2 Esdras 11 and 40. And the fourth came and overcame all the beasts that were past, and had power over the world with great fearfulness, and over the whole compass of the earth with much wicked oppression. And that's what the French, the Spanish, the British, forwarding the energy of Rome, was able to do. But this is talking about Rome. And so long time he dwelt upon the earth with deceit. For the earth hast thou not judged with truth, for thou hast afflicted the meek, thou hast hurt the peaceable, and thou hast loved liars, and hast destroyed the dwellings of them that brought forth fruit, and have cast down the walls of such as did thee no harm. Now you want to present yourself as a Christian, but the only Christian, but you use it in this sense. You use it in Revelation 13 and 11 for the two horns like a lamb to ultimately elevate yourself. It's just the right wing or so-called Christians. But all of these devils are sick. But as he's saying, you don't know your history, man. And they're trying to repeat that history. But this time they got AI on their side. And the tech billionaires and, the all of these plans of world domination through science and technology,
They're taught that their ancestors were pioneers, their ancestors were explorers and builders of civilization, that they brought progress and democracy and enlightenment to the world. They hear about the Renaissance. They hear about the Industrial Revolution. They hear about the Age of Discovery, and so forth and so on. And not about enslavement, not about genocide, not about the theft, not about the destruction that their people are responsible for. They're not taught that their prosperity was built on unimaginable suffering. They're not taught that their systems of government, their financial empires, their very sense of national identity are all rooted in exploitation. They don't know about the crimes. They don't know the real legacy of their people. And so they don't change. They don't have to change because they don't even realize what they need to correct. You know, when we look at colonialism, for example, the history that's taught in Western schools is usually an abstraction. Colonization is framed as something that it just sort of happened a long time ago, you know, something that was maybe unfortunate, but it was inevitable, and it ultimately was it represented progress, and there were many beneficial things to come from it. Never mind the millions of Africans who died in the Congo Free State under King Leopold. Most white Americans have never heard of them. Never mind the Bengal famine of 1943 when millions of Indians starved to death due to British policies. They don't even know about it. The fact that the American police forces evolved from slave patrols, they don't know about that either. And they're not any more informed about the ongoing crimes, like the pillage of African resources today, the economic neocolonialism that keeps entire regions of the world impoverished, the exploitation of labor in the global south. These aren't relics of history. That's the present day reality of what your people are doing. But the story that the white people are told does not include those realities, or else it packages those realities deceitfully and dishonestly. They package them dishonestly and deceitfully in the past just like they do now. The irony is that when they're confronted with the truth, many of these people will react defensively. You know, I didn't do that. That was in the past. Why should I feel guilty? But this reaction in and of itself reveals how little they're really understanding. It's not about guilt. It's about responsibility. You know, if a person inherits a stolen house, they may not have stolen it themselves, but they still live in it. And if they refuse to acknowledge where that house came from or how it came into their possession, if they insist that that house is rightfully theirs because the crime happened a long time ago, well, then they're complicit because the theft is ongoing. The crime never really stopped. So when people don't know their history, they cannot recognize when history is repeating itself and when history is actually just a continuum into the present. This is why so-called white people in America can watch their government arm and support genocide in Gaza, bomb Syria, Iraq, Yemen, and so on, and actually believe when they say it's for the purpose of security. They don't see the colonial mindset at work. That's why they can see corporations, for example, Western corporations, strip mine Africa for resources and not connect that to the centuries of plunder that came before. This is why they can hear about mass incarceration, about police brutality and systemic racism in the United States, and not understand that these are not new problems. These are just new forms of an old system. These are new manifestations of the same system. And this is why they don't resist. Why they don't challenge the structures that continue to exploit and continue to oppress. Because they don't even recognize those systems as continuations of the age-old exploitation and oppression. The truth is, white people have been colonized too. Not physically, not economically, but psychologically. They've been conditioned to believe in a history that never happened. A history where they were always the heroes. A history where they were never the villains, and where their victims were villains. And as long as they live inside that fiction, well, they'll continue to perpetuate the same crimes of their past, even without realizing it. Which just means that we're not even talking about past crimes. We're talking about ongoing crimes from the past until today. Like I said, it's a continuum. If there's ever going to be any real change, if there's ever going to be any hope for justice, then so-called white people have to actually learn your history. Not the history that makes you feel proud and makes you feel good, that makes you feel comfortable, but real history, the history that makes you uncomfortable, the history that you've denied all this time. And only when white people know their real history, really know it, then maybe they can begin to take the first steps towards repairing the damage that history caused.
And they're not going to do it because first they got to acknowledge their true history, their true nationality as Edomites.
The damage that it caused to millions upon millions of people all around the world, including themselves. I mean, Americans, particularly so-called white Americans, you're all like the child of the BTK killer. Try to come to terms with the fact that you were raised by a monster who you always thought was a good and upright man. If Americans in general really understood their history, well, they would know that the United States government has only ever used fear as a weapon against them. And every war that America has ever been involved in was only justified by lies. And every act of domestic repression has only ever been framed as being necessary for the sake of security. They would know that the anti-immigration movements, the anti-Muslim ban and so forth, and all of their surveillance programs, it's not new. It's the same thing. It's just rebranded versions of old crimes. There's absolute continuity. And the only reason that you don't know that is because you have no actual understanding of your own history. Yes, if Americans truly understood their history, they would not be so easily manipulated. They would not be so easily controlled. They would not be so quick to repeat the wrongs of the past, or rather to continue the wrongs of the past. But that's exactly why history is hidden from them. I mean, it's trite but true. There is nothing more powerful than knowledge. There's nothing more dangerous to a corrupt system than a population that remembers. And that's why our mission must be to educate people and to awaken people and to reconnect people with the reality of their own history, the good and the bad. Because when you understand your history, then you'll understand your enemy. Because they've been doing the same thing throughout history. And when you understand your enemy, then you'll understand how to defeat them. You'll understand how to oppose them. Because you've got an enemy who keeps you in a state of amnesia and a state of fake implanted memories. You know, every time you open your eyes, your enemy is right there in front of you telling you that he's your friend. And because you don't remember anything, you believe him. You understand? The whole country is getting their drink spiked. Everyone in that country is getting roofied.
And that's Jeremiah 51:7. Babylon have been a golden cup in the Lord's hand that have made the nations drunken. The nations have drunken of our wine and went mad. But Lord willing, I'll do a part 2 with the Elder Require Kwam from London. Lord willing, I'll be in a more of a, more in the spirit, but we got out what we could. Hopefully I will edify it on to the next. Shalom.